I come from Croatia. I'm going to be talking about mobile user acquisition and its pitfalls, meaning mistakes you can make while doing mobile user acquisition. Let me just see if this thing works. Apparently not. Okay, now it works. Perfect. So this is going to be our agenda for today. I'm going to do a short introduction on the company I work for and about myself, just so you get some bearings of why I'm saying the things that I'm saying, and that you can see how those things are correlated to your business. We're going to go through some user acquisition prerequisites, meaning some baseline stuff which need to be taken into consideration prior to actually starting mobile user acquisition for your business. We're going to go through some of optimization processes, which is super important today in the mobile app world, where there's more and more competitors and the margins are getting smaller and smaller. And also we're going to mention a few things which need to be taken into consideration in order to get the best possible results from your user acquisition efforts. So, a little bit about Nanobit. We are a Croatian game development company. We do casual mobile games, which means that all the stuff that I'm going to be talking about revolves around casual mobile games. Things might be different for mid-core and hardcore segments, just to keep that in mind. We are based in Croatia, but we also have offices in Bucharest and Budapest. There's 110 of us. We have around 62 million downloads and around 600K daily active users, just to give you some bearings on where we stand. A little bit about myself. My name is Nikola, as I said. This is me in my natural habitat. A friend of mine drew this actually for my birthday. I'm almost always in front of a computer, either doing Excel sheets or playing video games. You can see my best friend Benjamin here, eating the leftovers of my burger. His friends call him Benny. And you can see this is fantasy, not reality, just because there's actually some burger left, where in reality that wouldn't be the case. So let's start with a few user acquisition prerequisites. First, we're going to be talking about the broken teapot problem. Can you raise your hand if you know what this is, if you ever heard about it? Okay, perfect, because I invented this. It would be very weird if you knew about this before I actually came here. So this is something that a lot of development companies, especially game development companies, face these days because the scene is getting more and more crowded by the day. There's more and more competitors, there's more and more margins. So what game development companies and development companies in general do, they try to look at the front runner, at the best possible app or game they can look in their segment, being casual, mid-core, or hardcore, in trying to take that game and making a pretty similar, or even trying to make a better product. When we try to make a similar or a better product, we do it very fast to save time, money, to save basically budget for game development as it is. When we create the actual product, at first it might seem very similar to the actual front runner, to the best of the best in the segment. We look at it from every angle, it seems very good. We start pouring marketing budgets into it, and we see that a strange occurrence happens, which is we don't get any money back. Why is this? It's mostly because we didn't look at it close enough, which happens when you're under pressure from your stakeholders, from some other interested parties, which want to get the product out there as soon as possible, as soon as humanly possible. But when you take a closer look at the product, there's some nooks and crannies, some cracks, some spills in it, which might be a couple of bugs in the code, maybe playability isn't as good as it should be, maybe the monetization processes aren't in place as well as they are in the front runner. And what we do, we expect the same result as the best possible app in the category with our own, we can even call it a copy from the get-go, which is not really possible. Those problems aren't really problems if they are taken into consideration, if you work around them, if you actually try to fix them prior to starting your marketing efforts. But a lot of companies don't actually do that. Instead, they go into marketing heads first. That's why we need to talk about the bottom line. What is the bottom line? It's every notion which needs to be fixed or placed in the best possible way in order for your marketing efforts to actually make sense. Because what's the end goal? To make money, of course. All of you here are because you want to make more money from your games, from your apps, from selling services to the app or game owners. First thing we need to take into consideration is retention. Just to give you an idea of an industry standard, industry average, what we in the casual gaming segment consider a good game is something that has around 40% day one retention. That means that 40% of the people who actually install the game play it the day after they have installed it. If we hit 40% day one retention, we open up champagnes and we are very, very happy. If it's lower, of course, it seems that the game is not as fun as we thought, and more work needs to be put in place of production. What happens if we have a very, very fun game, let's say 40% day one retention, a lot of organic installs? We might start getting really hyped, really happy about the game, start pouring in marketing dollars. But instead, what we get back is a lot of users who actually don't spend money. Why? Because we haven't taken lifetime value into consideration. We might have a fun game, but that game doesn't necessarily have to earn us money. That's why we have to, in advance, think about what are we trying to achieve. Are we gonna go with a free product, a paid one? Is the free product gonna monetize through ads or in-app revenue? All of these questions need to be addressed prior to actually starting the production of the game, because every monetization process has its own very, very specific user acquisition strategy. Somewhere you want to go for the maybe more quality users, which are of course pricier. Maybe you want to go for the lower end, very inexpensive users, but get them in volume. When we actually take care of all of that, when we have a fun game, which users like to play, when we have our monetization processes in place, that's the only time we can start to actually talk about user acquisition. Two main segments of casual mobile game user acquisition for us is Facebook and networks. These two guys differ drastically. These are actually characters from our games, so if you guys want to play them, feel free to download Nanobit games. No charge, they're all free. We can take a look at Facebook as a very wise, old, knowledgeable wizard who has an algorithm which is very smart as well, and it actually works. Where if you want to pay more money per user, you will actually get a higher quality user as a result. Where networks can be looked at as, muscly, strong, brute-strength blacksmiths who drive in users in volume. Which means that for a higher pricing user on networks, in most cases, in our cases, we would get practically the same quality of user, but more of them. Just because most networks don't have an algorithm in place, what they have instead is a waterfall. Which means, in reality, that if you pay more, you're just going to get pushed higher in the waterfall. Your ads are going to be shown much faster, but to practically the same quality of user. These both segments need to be taken into consideration when determining your strategy, what we talked about. Where if you want very fast return on investment, high quality paying users who will actually be using your in-app purchasing models, you would most probably be gearing towards Facebook. Facebook target audiences, Instagram, audience network, and so on. Where on the other hand, if you are maybe monetizing through ads, you might go for a bit lower quality of users, much, much cheaper, and get them in huge volumes through ad networks. Also, what needs to be taken into consideration is the so-called K factor, or virality. How many of you guys, please raise your hands if you heard about the K factor, or virality? One guy, two guys, three guys, a girl, three guys and a girl, awesome. Anyone else? Okay, so let me just keep it very simple for everyone else. The K factor, or the virality factor, is the number of free users which you get by purchasing new users. The industry standard is around 0.4. which means for every 100 paid users, you get around 40 free users, just because you have climbed higher in App Store rankings. And of course, those users which you paid for have their own friends. They want to play with someone, they're going to invite their friends. So if you're looking for volume and you actually invest money in, let's say, networks, which bring more users but lower quality, you're going to get more viral users as well for free. This is something why we had to pretty much reconfigure our formula for determining return on ad spend. At first, it was very simple. We would put in the amount of installs we got, the amount of revenue we received, and divide it by the amount spent. And seeing if we received 20% on day 7 return on ad spend, if we're going to receive 50%, super easy to determine. But now, as the number of competitors increased drastically, as I said, margins are much, much smaller, we had to determine if user acquisition actually makes sense for us. Do we actually put in more money, or we cut everything completely? That's how we came up with this formula, where we take into calculation LTV, which is lifetime value, which comes from in-app purchases, plus 0.4, which is the virality factor, times the number of installs we got by paying users, times the organic LTV, which is much different than paid users' lifetime value, plus any ad revenue or cross-promotion which we might get from these users, which is a much, much smaller segment than all of this combined. This actually made sense for us, just because our monetization switched as well. We started pushing more ad revenue instead of just in-app purchases. We started seeing more users using actually rewarded videos to get something in our apps for free, to increase our ad revenue. So this formula actually made sense for us and has shown us that we actually made more money when taking into calculation ad revenue and the virality factor. I would like to talk about the correlation between all of these things. It's a lot of things at once, I agree, but we have to discuss them, of course. Spend versus cost per install versus conversion rate, which is the percentage of users which you get, which actually start paying money for your products, your in-app purchases, versus ROAS, which is return on ad spend, versus LTV of your customers. Where on many occasions, especially through Facebook, if you increase your spend, people mostly think that you're going to get a higher number of installs. This is not really the case. What happens if you increase your spend, it multiplies your marketing efforts drastically. In our case, I'm going to show you a real-life example after this slide, but I just want to mention that an increase in spend drastically increases cost per install through Facebook, if we're taking Facebook as an example, which in turn gets us a much higher quality of user, because Facebook algorithm says, okay, these guys, they obviously have money. Let's push our most highest quality users towards them, because we want our users to have the best possible experience, which is probably going to be with the guys with the most money. Those highest quality users are going to turn into payers fairly quickly. They're going to increase the conversion rate of our payers, which in return is going to increase their LTV, and we're going to see a much higher return on investment just by increasing budgets for our Facebook campaigns. This is a real-life example. So we took a cohort. We really wanted to measure this. We thought that it maybe made sense, but we really didn't know if it's going to make sense until we measured it. So for a cohort which ran for 3 weeks, we increased our spend for 230%. What we saw as a result for the same cohort was our average revenue per daily active user increased by 72%, which is insane. It's huge. So not only did we receive an increased number of installs, we also saw an increase in the quality of users which we received. Also, the LTV, lifetime value of the customer on day 30, increased by 59%, and the retention of users, which means that more users played our game on day 28, increased by 31%. Just by increasing budgets, we managed to get higher quality of users, more users, and users who actually play more of our games. Some things to take into consideration when doing user acquisition, which you may or may not know about. First of all, how many of you guys deal with ad networks on a, let's say, a weekly basis? Please raise your hands. I'm not going to call you out just so I can see how many people here use ad networks for user acquisition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, some people use ad networks. Fine. So you know basically that there are hundreds of them. We get those AppsFlyer and App Annie reports with top 30 by revenue, top 30 by retention, and so on. Those are all pretty much fine. We all use all of them. But we get pitched, I'm guessing you get pitched as well, on a weekly basis, some new networks which want to sell us their inventory. But what happens then? We have no idea about the quality of users of those networks. We have no idea if we're going to make any money back. And those guys cannot promise us anything because in most cases, they are just some DSP with 3 guys in a garage trying to sell some instant traffic in order to make a quick buck. So we had to think about ways to shield ourselves and our budgets from these low quality networks. What we introduced was, in our IO, which is an initial offering contract, basically a contract which you sign with a network prior to starting business with them, we introduced a small sub-segment saying that, okay, we're going to do business with you guys, but we're only going to pay for cohorts which reach a certain amount of ROI by day X. For one of our games, that's, let's say, 35% return on investment by day 7. If we don't reach those numbers, we're not going to pay you, because there's no way for me to know who your publishers are. They keep them secret. They don't share that data with you. It's mostly just string numbers saying publisher 123XYZ had 10 installs. Is it Candy Crush Saga? Is it Clash Royale? Is it something else? We have no idea. So this is something that we took into consideration to shield ourselves from all of those networks which try to sell us traffic. And just to be completely honest, a substantial amount of them agreed to these statements. And this is something that we now use as a norm when talking to new networks, because if I'm going to be confident enough to pay you a certain amount of dollars for you to show my games within your apps, I would need some security back that you're not just going to burn through the money, close up shop, and never return my phone call again. This is what keeps them in check. You have to think about organic versus paid users as well, because we talked about the quality of both of these. The organic user is pretty much your normal everyday guy who's gonna, browse the app store while looking for some fun, maybe prior to a football game, gonna play the game for a certain amount of time. He's gonna spend little to no money, and then he's gonna practically uninstall the game very quickly. On the other hand, we have these rich guys on the right, who we actually have to pay money to get them, because Facebook knows who the users are who actually spend money, who the users are who actually play games. So if we get those guys, we get their friends as well through the virality or the K factor. I'm saying this because some marketers really, they limit the amount of money they want to spend per one install, which is practically cutting the branch that you're sitting on. Why wouldn't you pay a bit more money to get a higher quality of user if the conversion rate correlates with the increase of the spend per install? I would much more like to pay for a higher quality user to get their friends as well than to just leave everything to the organic guy and hoping that we're going to get some revenue in return. Please think about cash flow. This is what a lot of young companies do. They see immediate results with user acquisition, which is kind of really not that hard if you have an okay game, just because new creatives, new games are very interesting to gamers, and they will install whatever they see that is new and fresh and fairly okay in quality. When you see the immediate return, you are very driven to reinvest that money again, to multiply it by 2, 3, 5, 10 times. But what happens then? You have to take into consideration that both app stores, Apple and Google, take between 30 days and 3 months to actually give you your money back through in-app purchases which were made by your bot users. In that meantime, you have to take into consideration as well the refunds which your players are gonna ask for which you might not have money at all. With both of those problems and you reinvesting money, you can soon enough find yourself in a cashless situation where you have no operational budget to spend on your company. And of course, we have to mention ASO, or App Store Optimization, which needs to be kept in check in order to get the best possible results, especially if you're spending a lot of money on your marketing. We at Nanobit constantly have A/B tests live, either through split metrics or through Android developer pages. We constantly test icons, screenshots, descriptions, and keywords to get the best possible App Store page you can imagine, just to get the most money back from our marketing efforts. Just by testing the icon and to getting the better version, on occasions we would increase our install rates by up to 35 to 50%, just by refreshing the icon, and especially if we analyze and optimize everything else as well. So I hope that you got something new and fresh out of this. I'm going to be outside if anyone wants to talk about this in detail. Now I would like to thank you for your attention and to ask if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, do you speak English, guys?
I might need a translator for Russian.
Вопросы можно задать по-русски, мы как-нибудь все вместе справимся с тем, чтобы суметь понять вопрос, а потом суметь понять ответ. Вы в докладе в самом поняли что-нибудь? Но вопросов не осталось. Все очень логично и понятно. Господа, давайте руки поднимаем. Okay, people will think I will ask the first question. You have the good story about the game applications. And how do you think the same for other applications from other, I don't know, markets? Or you have specific stuff from the game industry?
So this is very, I wouldn't say this is specific for the games industry. I would say this is a lot of these things, especially the networks versus Facebook, applies to all apps in general, where you have to determine what your source of revenue is and then compare it to the actual cost of the new user per given segment, if it's going to come from Facebook, Google, or any other network. Where then you have to determine what you want. Is it going to be volume or quality of install? It's very similar towards all apps, and it's also very dependent on if you're looking to be profitable immediately, or you want to run your app through marketing budgets for some time to maybe reach some higher rankings within app stores and then starting to turn profit.
And do you work in all over the world in many different countries? Or
so
on Europe?
What we do, we mostly cater to tier 1 countries, US and let's say English-speaking countries, just because the reason that we primarily had only one language, which is English, within our games, but we started doing translations now, and we are now in the Middle East, Russia, and Far East as well.
And what do you see in different countries? If your application is good and have 1 day retention 40% in, I don't know, in UK or in some other countries, does it mean that it will be the same good in other countries, or mentality really different and you have strange results?
So yeah, what we found was that the US was by far the highest quality of user, especially if you take into consideration Facebook's algorithm, which pushes actually the best possible users towards you. We would always put US aside, and then tier 1 countries, which are, I'd say, UK, Canada, and Australia, we would group them together, and then see bigger markets by themselves. Let's say Russia is always singled out because it needs more budget and more coverage for user acquisition. In terms of quality, it's how it differs as well. So tier 1 plus US is the highest quality, and then all the others you need to kind of tweak your approach to see what works. where maybe in non-English speaking countries we can acquire users for much lower price, but we also need to adjust our own expectations because in more cases than not we will receive a lower ROI, but it will come back in return as the higher number of installs for maybe countries which don't offer as much ROI in start as the tier ones.
Okay, thank you. Maybe some questions? Зал? Все поели и спят. Вот вопрос. А микрофончик можно? Микрофончик бежит.
Hi, Nikola.
Hi.
My name is Marina, and thank you so much for your presentation. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
And my question is that, what KPIs do you usually put in I/O when you're working with ad networks?
Excellent question. So we have a few different standards which need to be reached when talking to ad networks, because as I said, it's pretty much, I mean, it's stupid to say, but it's pretty much the Wild West. You never know what you're going to get from a new network, which, I don't know, a few friends open up when they decided to open their own business. They connect to an exchange. They don't offer their own inventory, but someone else's. So it's very strange to work with them. So we have a few requirements which need to be met in order for us to start working with a given network. So first one would be definitely no fraud. It might seem stupid to enter it with letters in our contract because no one wants fraud, but I have a feeling that they take you more seriously if you actually mention you want no fraud, and that you can actually sue them if there are fraudulent accounts and installs within their user bases. And then, of course, no rebrokering. We don't want rebrokered traffic, just because they will sell our traffic to a new source, and then a new source, and then a new source, and everyone is going to add a few cents on the install, and then at the end we're going to get the lowest quality possible install for the highest possible price. On top of that, we always ask for a working API. An API which can send us back data on spend, per campaign, and per market. Why? Because we feel that if it's a working network which actually puts quality instead of quantity as their, I don't know, train of thought, we feel that they need to have engineers within their company, because if they're not gonna see how the quality of traffic is within their company, if they're not gonna have engineers, they're probably gonna not follow the quality of the traffic within their network. So they need to have a working API which can send us back data on spend, per market, per campaign, and per publisher. On top of that, we need a working dashboard. I want to see what's going on their end if I log into their network and their website. Instead, some of them offer, we're going to send you Excel sheets with your results. Okay, great. I can type on an Excel sheet that I just made $1 million. Doesn't make it true. So I really look for an active dashboard on their end. And what we also look for is we specifically say no mobile websites, no mobile website traffic, just because some networks as well don't really have that many options. They don't have a lot of publishers within them. So they try to push mobile traffic to your app, which really doesn't work at all in our case. Maybe for someone else it does work. But it was the lowest possible LTV we got historically. So those are, I'd say, the segments which we add into our I/O prior to starting to work with someone.
Thank you very much. I think we have no time. Я очень рекомендую вам подходить и задавать вопросы, если вы стесняетесь здесь, потому что на самом деле редко удается найти человека, который руками потрогал много разной рекламы в разных странах, понимает, как это все работает и имеет большое количество инсайтов. То есть зря вы не пользуетесь этим, собственно, радостным моментом. I think that it's really cool you have so specific data, and I hope that people will come and ask you questions, because not every day we can meet the people like you with so huge experience in practical stuff to share with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.